Ethan Cole had not eaten inside a public place in almost 4 years. The billionaire tech founder who once built empires out of glass towers now hid inside them. But that Sunday afternoon, the city felt a little quieter, and his daughter Sophie had begged him with a tiny voice he had not heard in weeks. "Daddy, please, can we eat somewhere with pancakes?" She said it with that slow, gentle tone only a child who had learned patience through pain could have. Against every instinct, Ethan nodded and told his driver to stop at a roadside diner outside Brooklyn called Maple Diner. It was nothing fancy, just silver stools, chrome lights, and the smell of butter and coffee. Sophie's wheelchair fit between 2 tables near the window. The waitress who came to take their order had a calm smile and tired eyes. Her name tag read Lena. Ethan ordered quietly and checked his phone while Sophie looked at the syrup bottles as if they were treasure. For the first time in months, the air between them was not heavy. Then Ethan excused himself for a minute to the restroom, leaving his daughter with crayons and the stack of pancakes Lena had just brought. What happened next would change every headline in America. A customer sitting by the counter noticed the billionaire's little girl struggling to lift her spoon. Without hesitation, Lena knelt down beside her. The camera from the stranger's phone captured the scene from the corner table. In the footage, the waitress rolled up her sleeves and gently wiped syrup from Sophie's cheek, whispering, "You can do it, sweetheart. Just try one more spoon." Her voice was warm and steady. She did not know the man who owned half the skyline was standing behind her, now frozen. Ethan watched his daughter's lips curve into a smile, a real one, something that had not happened since the accident that took his wife and stole his child's ability to walk. He felt his chest tighten, not from anger or shock, but something more dangerous, tenderness. The stranger kept filming. When Ethan finally cleared his throat, Lena jumped up, embarrassed. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. "I just wanted to help her eat." Ethan's instinctive armor snapped back into place. "Thank you," he said flatly, and wheeled Sophie out without another word. 2 hours later, the video hit the internet. The caption read, "Billionaire's daughter being cared for by diner waitress while her father's away." The clip spread across social media like wildfire. Within hours, the hashtag #ColdDad was trending. Talk shows replayed the scene, slow motion, analyzing every frame. Commentators accused Ethan of neglect, while others praised the woman for her kindness. By evening, Ethan's publicist called him 12 times, and Victoria, his PR director, warned him the board wanted a statement. Sitting alone in his dark penthouse, Ethan watched the video on mute. In it, Lena's hair was slightly messy from work, her uniform wrinkled, but her smile was genuine. Sophie leaned toward her with a trust he had not seen in years. He replayed the last 5 seconds again and again, focusing on that moment when Sophie looked up and laughed. It was the same laugh his late wife once said sounded like wind chimes. Ethan felt something crack deep inside. It was not pride or fury. It was guilt mixed with awe. For the first time, he realized the footage everyone mocked him with might be showing something far greater than shame. It showed a stranger teaching his daughter how to feel safe again. And it showed a father who had forgotten how to love. The next morning, Manhattan glittered outside Ethan Cole's penthouse windows. But inside, everything was silent except for the soft whir of medical equipment beside Sophie's bed. The same footage that millions had watched overnight now played on every morning show. His PR manager, Victoria Grant, was already waiting in the living room tablet, in hand a sharp navy suit replacing sleep. "You need to make a statement, Ethan," she said. "People think you left your disabled daughter unattended. Investors are nervous." Ethan stood by the window, staring at the skyline he built. "I don't owe anyone my personal life," he said coldly. Victoria sighed. "You owe them their confidence. Remember, your face is your company." Her voice carried the weight of both loyalty and ambition. She wanted him to care because she wanted to keep her job. When she left, Ethan turned back to his daughter. Sophie was drawing circles on her tablet, humming faintly. "You liked her, didn't you?" he asked. Sophie nodded without looking up. "She was nice. She didn't look at me like I'm broken." Ethan's throat tightened. He promised himself he would find that waitress, not for appearances, but because for the first time his daughter had responded to someone other than him. Meanwhile, across Brooklyn, Lena Morales was finishing a double shift at Maple Diner. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but her manager Carl showed her his phone. "You're famous now," he joked nervously. The viral clip filled the screen, comments scrolling faster than she could read. Some called her an angel, others accused her of staging it. "I didn't even know someone was filming," she whispered. "I just wanted to help her eat." Carl shrugged. "Internet doesn't care. Just stay off social media for a while." That night at her tiny studio apartment, Lena cooked instant noodles and video called her mother in Texas. Her mom's oxygen machine hissed softly through the speaker. "Mija." "I saw the video," her mother said, smiling weakly. "You looked like your brother when he used to feed me soup." Lena's heart ached. Her brother Mateo had died 3 years ago from a rare spinal disease, because the family couldn't afford treatment. Since then, Lena had worked any job she could find, waitress, cleaner, caregiver, sending every spare dollar home. "You just have to keep being kind," her mother added. "The world notices kindness even when it hurts." The next day, Ethan's security chief handed him a file. "We ran a background check on the waitress. Lena Morales, 28. No criminal record. Works 2 jobs, supports her sick mother." Ethan nodded. "Find the diner's owner. I want to meet her privately." Victoria overheard and frowned. "That's not wise," she warned. "People will think you're trying to clean up your image." Ethan replied, "Maybe I'm just trying to understand what made my daughter smile." The car ride to Brooklyn was quiet. Sophie sat beside him, clutching her small stuffed rabbit. When they arrived, the diner buzzed with lunchtime chatter. Conversations paused as the billionaire stepped inside. Lena froze behind the counter, recognizing him instantly. The last time she had seen him, he was glaring like a man carved from ice. "Mr. Cole," she said softly. "If this is about the video, I swear I didn't. I know," he interrupted. "I came to apologize. I was wrong." She blinked, unsure she'd heard correctly. Sophie's wheelchair squeaked as Ethan gently moved her forward. "Sophie wanted pancakes again," he added awkwardly. "She said yours were better." The tension broke with a small laugh from Sophie. Lena smiled back, warmth flooding her chest. She served them quietly, noticing how Ethan's expensive watch looked out of place against the chipped counter. Around them, customers whispered, but no one dared film this time. Ethan thanked her and left a generous tip without a word. Later that night, Victoria confronted him in his office. "You think being seen with that woman helps your reputation," she snapped. "You built this empire on control, not sentiment." Ethan stared at the city lights. Maybe control is what ruined everything. When she left, he watched the Maple Diner footage again, pausing on the moment Lena wiped Sophie's cheek. It was the gentlest thing he'd ever seen. Meanwhile, Lena returned home to find an envelope under her door. Inside was a letter from a lawyer representing Coal Dynamics, offering a confidentiality settlement and a check large enough to pay off her debts. She tore it in half. The next morning, she returned the pieces to the lawyer with a note. "Tell Mr. Cole I don't want his money. I just hope his daughter keeps smiling." The message reached Ethan that evening. He read it twice, then folded it carefully into his wallet. That small act unsettled Victoria more than any public scandal. "You're letting this girl distract you," she hissed. "She's a nobody." Ethan's voice was calm but firm. "She's someone who treated my daughter like a person." Lena continued working long hours. Customers started recognizing her, leaving small notes. "You made us believe in good again." But for every kind message, there were cruel ones accusing her of chasing fame. She ignored them, holding on to what really mattered: the little girl's smile. Across town, Ethan watched Sophie sleep. The city lights flickered across her face, and in her tiny hand, she clutched the embroidered handkerchief with her name stitched by her late mother, a keepsake she never let go of. In his mind, that cloth became a symbol of everything he had lost and what he might still recover. Somewhere between guilt and admiration, Ethan made a decision. He would see Lena again, not because of headlines or pity, but because both he and his daughter had begun to remember what love looked like. The next morning, Maple Diner was quieter than usual. The lunchtime crowd had thinned after the viral frenzy, and Lena worked with her head down, determined to forget that a billionaire had ever walked through her doors. But when the bell over the entrance rang, the air changed. The man standing there was impossible to ignore. Black suit, silver tie expression, carved from stone. Ethan Cole. The diner fell silent except for the hiss of coffee on the grill. He walked straight to the counter, every step precise, his security guard waiting outside like a shadow. Lena's stomach clenched. "Mr. Cole." She started wiping her hands on her apron. "If this is about, it is," he interrupted, voice clipped. "I want to see the security footage from that day." "You already saw it," she said quietly. "The whole world did." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "I want the raw footage. No cuts, no edits. I need to know who filmed it." Carl, the manager, came over nervous. "Sir, we don't share security video without a warrant." Ethan slid a card across the counter. "Have your lawyer call mine." His tone was pure command. But Lena stepped between them, her voice firm. "You don't need a video to know what you saw." He turned to her slowly. "I don't need sympathy from strangers who want clicks." "Then maybe," she said evenly, "you should spend more than 2 minutes with your daughter." The words hit him harder than any headline. For a moment, he just stared, his jaw tight, eyes burning. Then, from behind him came a small voice. "She's not mean, Daddy." Ethan turned. Sophie sat in her wheelchair, her tiny hand gripping the stuffed rabbit. Her face was calm, serious. "She helped me." The diner went still again. Ethan froze, every defense crumbling. He looked back at Lena. She didn't gloat. She just nodded like someone who had said her truth and didn't need to repeat it. Ethan exhaled slowly, something breaking inside. "Thank you," he said softly, surprising even himself, "for helping her." He left without another word, but the moment stayed with him all day. That night, he sat in his penthouse, watching the rain slide down glass walls, while Sophie slept in the next room. He replayed her voice in the diner. "She helped me." Those 3 words repeated in his mind until guilt and curiosity blurred together. Ethan called his assistant past midnight. Find out everything about that woman, he said. Discreetly. Hours later, a file landed in his inbox. Lena Morales, age 28, born in El Paso. No criminal record, worked double shifts, sent most of her paycheck to Texas for her mother's medical bills. Her brother had died young. Ethan closed the file, eyes tired. She helps people, he murmured. The next day, his lawyer reported that the person who had leaked the diner video was a freelance journalist tipped off by someone inside his PR team. That someone was Victoria's intern. Ethan said nothing, but something darkened behind his eyes. Meanwhile, Lena tried to forget the confrontation. She cleaned tables, poured coffee, ignored whispers. But that night, as she counted tips, the doorbell jingled again. Ethan stood there drenched from the rain. "Mr. Cole," she said, startled. "You shouldn't be here." "Maybe not," he replied. "But I needed to tell you something." He hesitated, the words unnatural to him. "I'm sorry for how I spoke to you, for assuming the worst." She looked at him cautious. "It's fine. People assume things all the time." "My daughter doesn't," he said quietly. "She sees truth faster than I do." The honesty in his tone disarmed her. "How's she doing?" Lena asked. "Better when she talks about you," Ethan admitted. He glanced down, almost embarrassed. "Would you consider helping her again?" "Not as a waitress, as a caregiver. I can pay?" "No," Lena interrupted, shaking her head. "Not for money. If she needs me, I'll come, but I won't be part of some image repair campaign." Ethan almost smiled, just a flicker. "I wouldn't dare ask you to." Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. He extended a hand. "Then help her as yourself." Lena studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "One condition. No cameras, no press, just the girl." He nodded once, sealing the deal without another word. That night, Lena returned home to find a car waiting outside her building. Inside sat Sophie, waving shyly, and beside her Ethan, looking oddly out of place in a neighborhood where the street lights flickered. "She wouldn't go to sleep until she saw you," he said simply. Lena smiled and stepped closer, smoothing Sophie's blanket. "Well then," she whispered, "let's fix that." Sophie reached into her pocket and handed Lena a small folded handkerchief embroidered with her name in blue thread. "So you don't forget me," she said. Lena's throat tightened. "I won't." As they drove away, Ethan watched them through the mirror, the waitress humming softly, while his daughter fell asleep. Something inside him shifted. For years he had lived surrounded by perfection, yet untouched by peace. But now, in the reflection of a diner waitress holding his child's hand, he saw the first glimmer of something he had long buried: humanity. Ethan Cole had built his entire life around contracts and negotiations, yet the one conversation that mattered most refused to follow a script. The morning after that night in the rain, he stood in his daughter's playroom, watching Lena show Sophie how to hold a paintbrush. The child's right hand trembled, but Lena's patience never did. "That's it, sweetheart," she whispered. "The color listens to you if you go slow." Sophie laughed softly, the kind of laugh Ethan used to hear before the accident. It sounded like music to him. When Lena finally looked up, she caught him watching, and he straightened awkwardly, pretending to check his phone. "You don't have to hover," she said with a small smile. "She's doing great." "I don't hover," he lied, and Lena laughed for the first time since they met. It startled him more than any board meeting. Later that day, he asked his assistant to arrange a meeting at his office, but found himself driving to the diner instead. Lena was cleaning tables when he walked in. "We need to talk," he said, voice quieter than usual. She tensed. Is Sophie okay? Better than okay, he said. Because of you. He hesitated, then added, I want to hire you properly. Full-time caregiver. Live-in if possible. I'll handle your mother's treatment bills too. The offer hung in the air like thunder. Lena shook her head. You can't just buy kindness, Mr. Cole. I helped her because she needed it, not because I wanted a job. Ethan exhaled slowly. I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to give Sophie what makes her happy. He paused, and maybe learned something myself. Lena's resolve softened, but she still hesitated. You promised no cameras, no PR headlines, I promise, he said. No one needs to know. Just us. 2 days later, she packed a small suitcase and moved into the Cole residence. The staff were polite, but distant whispering as she passed. They had seen many temporary assistants before, all leaving after realizing how cold the house was. But Lena was different. She filled the silence with gentle words and the smell of pancakes. She found Sophie's wheelchair gathering dust and decorated it with small stickers of stars. Now it's a rocket, she said. Sophie giggled. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching something unexplainable rising in his chest. That evening, Lena cooked dinner for 3. Ethan hadn't eaten at his own table in years. He sat stiffly while Lena served macaroni and roasted vegetables. Sophie chattered about her day, describing colors she had mixed. Daddy tried to paint too, she announced proudly. Lena smiled at him. Really, how'd that go? Disaster, Ethan admitted dryly. Turns out billionaires have no talent for finger painting. For a moment, they all laughed and the sound felt foreign, yet right. After dinner, Sophie asked Lena to read her a bedtime story. Ethan listened from the hallway as Lena's voice floated through the air, warm, steady, the same tone she had used in the diner. When she finished, she tucked the blanket around Sophie and whispered something Ethan couldn't hear. Then Sophie reached under her pillow and handed Lena the embroidered handkerchief again. Keep it safe, she said sleepily, until I can walk again. Lena folded it carefully, eyes shining. That night, Ethan found her sitting on the balcony, looking at the city lights. You could have said no, he said. Why did you come? She shrugged. Because she believes she can walk again. I want to be there when she does. The simplicity of her answer disarmed him. You think she will if someone believes with her, Lena said. Ethan looked at her profile against the skyline and felt something strange hope mixed with fear. The following weeks became a rhythm of small miracles. Sophie started eating without assistance. She laughed more. She called Lena Miss Sunshine. Ethan caught himself smiling at the nickname. At work, he began arriving later, leaving earlier, confusing his board members. Victoria, his PR director, noticed immediately. You're slipping, she warned. The market doesn't care about your charity cases. Ethan's expression hardened. She's not a case. She's my daughter. But Victoria saw more than fatherly concern. She saw a man thawing, and it terrified her because her control over him depended on his coldness. One evening, Lena walked into the study to find Ethan, surrounded by papers, tension heavy on his face. Bored trouble? She asked gently. Always, he said. They think empathy is bad for business. Maybe you need new business, she said lightly. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then closed the laptop. Maybe I do. They shared coffee on the balcony, the city humming below. For a few quiet minutes, neither spoke. It felt like a truce between two worlds. But peace never lasts in stories built on guilt. The next morning, tabloids splashed photos of Ethan, leaving a hospital with Lena beside him. twisting the narrative into something scandalous. He hadn't even noticed the paparazzi following them when they took Sophie to her therapy appointment. The headlines read, "Billionaire CEO and waitress turned nanny share secret life together." Victoria stormed into his office, waving the paper. "You let this happen," she shouted. "Now they think you're having an affair with an employee." Ethan's patience snapped. "Enough, Victoria. You care more about headlines than people." She glared. "And you care more about a waitress than your company." He didn't answer, because for the first time that accusation might have been true. That night he found Lena sitting by Sophie's bed, humming softly. "They're writing things again," she said quietly. "I don't care what they write," Ethan replied. "As long as she's okay." Lena smiled faintly. "You're learning, Mr. Cole, learning what that love's not bad press." Outside, the city lights shimmered against the glass, and in that fragile reflection, Ethan realized he wasn't just protecting his daughter anymore. He was being saved by the same woman he'd once accused of wanting attention. The days turned into weeks, and what began as a fragile truce slowly became a rhythm of quiet familiarity. Ethan still carried his phone everywhere, but now it often stayed face down on the table. The board could wait. The world could wait. Each morning, Lena helped Sophie stretch her legs in the therapy room, her voice steady and encouraging. "One more try, sweetheart," she whispered as Sophie pushed her trembling legs against the floor bars. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching, hands in his pockets, afraid to interfere but unable to leave. When Sophie fell, Lena didn't panic. She knelt beside her and said softly, "Falling means you're trying. Trying means you're brave." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. No therapist had ever spoken like that. Later that night, as Lena cleared away dishes, he asked, "How do you do that? How do you always know what to say?" She looked up at him, tired but kind. "Because I've seen what happens when no one says anything." He frowned, curious. She hesitated, then said, "My brother was born with a spinal disorder. We didn't have insurance. My parents worked themselves sick, trying to keep him alive. When the bills got too high, the doctors stopped calling. No one said anything." Her voice cracked. He was 15. Ethan's breath caught. "I'm sorry, don't be," she said quietly. "He's why I help people. He used to tell me, Lena, kindness is the only thing that outlives you." Ethan sat across from her, silent for a long moment. "My wife used to say something similar," he admitted. She believed in small gestures, notes, smiles, pancakes on hard mornings. "I didn't get it back then." Lena studied his face, seeing the exhaustion beneath the power. "What happened?" she asked. Ethan looked out the window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. "We were driving home one night. I was on the phone. We argued about it. She told me to hang up. I didn't. A truck ran the red light. She died instantly. Sophie woke up in the hospital and couldn't move her legs." His voice dropped to a whisper. "She hasn't laughed since until you." The confession hung heavy between them. Lena's eyes softened. "You blame yourself every day." "But she doesn't," Lena said. "Children forgive faster than they learn words. Maybe you should too." Ethan almost smiled but couldn't hold it. He stood abruptly muttering, "Good night," before leaving the room. The next morning he found a note on the kitchen counter. It was written in Lena's looping script, "Today we try hope again." It wasn't signed, but the words stayed with him. That day he joined Sophie's therapy session, for the first time holding her hands as she balanced between bars. She giggled when he almost tripped. Lena smiled quietly from the corner, her heart swelling at the sight. That evening, the three of them cooked together. Sophie mashed potatoes with a plastic spoon, while Ethan chopped vegetables under Lena's direction. "You're not bad at this," she teased. "Don't tell the board," he replied, and she laughed. For a fleeting second, it felt like family, but the walls of wealth have long memories, and not everyone inside them welcomed warmth. Victoria, watching from a distance, grew restless. She had built her entire career on managing Ethan's public image, and now this waitress threatened everything. She began monitoring Lena's movements, convincing herself it was for the company's protection. One evening, she cornered Lena in the elevator. "You're good," she said with a sharp smile. "Too good, but don't mistake gratitude for affection." Lena stared at her, calm but unflinching. "You think I'm here for his money? Aren't you?" Victoria asked. "You live in his home, eat at his table. That's a convenient way to heal your own life, isn't it?" Lena took a breath. "I'm here because his daughter trusts me, and because I can sleep at night knowing I'm not the one faking compassion for a paycheck." The doors opened and Lena walked away, leaving Victoria's face pale with anger. That night, Ethan found Victoria waiting in his study. "You're losing control," she warned. "You're letting that woman cloud your judgment. The board is already asking questions." "Tell them I don't answer to them about my daughter," Ethan said coldly. "And if you can't support that, I'll find someone who can." Victoria froze. It was the first time he'd ever spoken to her like that. Meanwhile, Lena sat with Sophie, reading her a bedtime story. "Does your dad still miss your mom?" Sophie asked suddenly. Lena hesitated. "I think he misses the part of himself he lost with her. Do you miss anyone?" Sophie continued. "My brother," Lena admitted softly. "Every day." "Maybe they're both watching," Sophie whispered. "Maybe they're friends up there." The innocence of it broke something inside Lena. She kissed Sophie's forehead and tucked her in. Downstairs, Ethan poured a glass of whiskey and found Lena standing by the window. "She told me you miss your wife," Lena said quietly. He nodded. "I do, but not the way I used to. For years I thought grief meant loyalty. Now I think it just means I was afraid to live again." Lena looked at him, tears in her eyes. "Then maybe you're already healing." For the first time, he didn't look away. The silence between them felt alive, charged with something fragile and forbidden. Then Sophie's voice echoed faintly from upstairs. "Good night, Daddy. Good night, sweetheart." He called back, still holding Lena's gaze. In that suspended moment, something unspoken passed between them, the acknowledgement of two wounded souls who had found in each other a reflection of survival. But love born in broken places is never safe, and both of them knew it. Neither said a word as they turned away, unaware that in the shadows beyond the hallway, Victoria had heard every word. The storm came quietly. At first, not through thunder or lightning, but through whispers. Victoria's fury had been festering since that night. She overheard Ethan and Lena in the hallway, the unspoken tenderness in their voices, confirming what she already feared. The man she once controlled through image and ambition was slipping beyond her reach. And the waitress, with her soft words and unpolished grace, had done what years of corporate loyalty could not made him human again. In Victoria's world, humanity was weakness, and weakness could be eliminated. She called her contact at the gossip outlet The Insider. Her voice cool and precise. "I've got a story," she said, "but I want it big." Within days, an email arrived in Ethan's inbox. Anonymous. Attached 3 photos: Lena outside a charity office receiving an envelope. The message read, "She's selling your story, proof of transaction." Ethan's chest tightened. His mind replayed every moment, every smile, every small kindness, now tainted with doubt. He called Lena immediately. "Where were you last Thursday night?" His tone was sharp cold, the voice of a man who had trusted too soon. "At the Children's Rehabilitation Center," she said, confused. "Why did you take money from anyone there?" A pause. "For the kids' supplies, yes. Donations came in cash." "Sometimes I'm not asking about the kids," Ethan snapped. "I'm asking about you." The silence that followed was heavy. "You think I'd do that?" she whispered. "After everything, I think I don't know who you are anymore," he said. The call ended, and the line between guilt and pride hardened into distance. Hours later, the headlines hit. "Waitress exploits billionaires, disabled daughter for fame, leaked receipts prove it." The photos were cropped, captions twisted, comment sections exploded. Hashtags like "sorry fake kindness" and "gold digger" trended across platforms. Outside Ethan's Manhattan tower, reporters swarmed. Victoria arrived in his office pretending concern. "Crisis management team's ready," she said. "We'll issue a statement. Say she acted alone." "No," he said quietly. She didn't. But when he looked at Sophie's tear-stained face, later that night his resolve broke. "Is she bad, Daddy?" Sophie asked. "No," he said softly, his voice cracking. "But people think she is, and I have to protect you." Lena was gone the next morning, her small room empty, except for the folded handkerchief left on the desk. Sophie's handkerchief. Ethan stood in the doorway, holding it, his throat closing. "Where did she go?" Sophie asked, eyes wide. "Home," he managed to say. "Why, because of me?" The words cut deeper than any headline. "No, sweetheart," he whispered, kneeling beside her. "Because of me." The mansion fell into silence again, heavier than before. At work, Ethan's staff avoided his gaze. His inbox overflowed with PR drafts, all hollow apologies. But every night he stared at the empty space across the dinner table and felt the weight of something real slipping away. Lena, meanwhile, boarded a bus to Texas, clutching a single suitcase. The journey was long through rain-slicked highways and desert plains that blurred into memory. She arrived at her mother's small house, a modest place, smelling of lavender and coffee. "Baby, what happened?" her mother asked. "The world happened," Lena whispered, collapsing into her arms. Back in Manhattan, Victoria celebrated quietly. The public loved a downfall, and Ethan's brand had stabilized for now. But when she entered his office that week, she found him staring at a spreadsheet. Eyes dark. "Good work," he said without emotion. "You cleaned the mess." "That's what I do," she said smoothly. "No," he replied, his voice cutting. "You make them." He turned the screen toward her bank transfers invoices. Proof that Victoria had rerouted millions from the company's charity foundation into shell accounts. "You used the kids' hospital funds," he said. "You buried them under PR expenses." Victoria blanched. "You can't prove I can," he said, slamming the file shut. "And I will." For the first time, fear flickered in her eyes. "You'd destroy everything for her." "No," he said, standing. "I'm saving what's left of me." That night, Ethan sat alone on his balcony, wind cold against his face. He held Sophie's handkerchief, the embroidery faded from washing, and realized what he'd done. He had exiled the only person who had treated him like a man instead of a brand. Downstairs, Sophie refused to eat. "Call her," she said. "Tell her to come back." "I can't," Ethan whispered. "It's not that simple. You said people can change." "Daddy," Sophie said through tears. "So why can't you?" Her voice shattered him. He left her room and stood in the hallway staring at his reflection in the glass. The man looking back was everything the world respected and nothing his daughter needed. The next morning he ordered his jet prepared. "Destination?" the pilot asked. Ethan's voice was hoarse but steady. "Texas." In the meantime, Lena had found work at a small cafe near the local children's hospital. She poured coffee for construction workers and teachers, grateful for the anonymity. On her breaks, she volunteered at the rehabilitation wing helping kids paint. One day she noticed a little girl struggling with a brush, her movements slow and uncertain. "You're doing fine," Lena said softly. The girl smiled shyly. "My dad says if I try hard enough, I can walk again." Lena felt her chest tighten. "He's right," she whispered. That night, as the Texas sun bled into the horizon, a black SUV stopped outside the cafe. Inside sat a man who hadn't slept in days, holding a child's handkerchief in his lap. Ethan Cole had found her, but for the first time, he wasn't sure what to say. The small cafe in Texas smelled of cinnamon and burnt coffee when Ethan walked in. He didn't belong there, and everyone knew it. The polished shoes, the tailored coat, the eyes that carried the exhaustion of too many apologies. He looked like a man who'd lost everything but still had too much. Lena froze behind the counter, her hands wrapped around a steaming pot. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then she turned away. "We don't serve press here," she said quietly. "I'm not the press," Ethan answered. His voice cracked. "Just a man who finally knows what he destroyed." Lena set the pot down, shoulders trembling. "What do you want?" "To make things right," he said. "You already did," she replied, still facing the window. "You made me famous for all the wrong reasons." Ethan took a step closer. "Victoria's behind it. She planted everything, the fake photos, the rumors. She's gone now. I exposed her." Lena turned, then eyes filled with disbelief. "And you want me to thank you for cleaning up your own mess?" He shook his head. "No, I want to thank you for making me realize who I was before the money." The tension in the cafe thickened. A few customers whispered, recognizing him. Lena motioned toward the door. "Please just go. I'm building a life here that doesn't need saving." "I didn't come to save you," Ethan said softly. "I came to learn how to live again." Before she could respond, a small group of reporters burst through the door, cameras flashing. "Mr. Cole, are you here to reconcile with your former nanny? Is this another publicity stunt? Lena, is it true you blackmailed him?" The questions came like bullets. Ethan moved, instantly stepping between Lena and the cameras. "Enough," he shouted. "Leave her alone." But the chaos only grew. Someone shouted about a charity scandal. Another mentioned Sophie's name. Ethan's chest heaved as he tried to shield Lena. But in that moment, he saw her fear not of the cameras, but of being dragged back into a life she had finally escaped. She whispered, "You should go." "Not without you," he said, voice raw. "Ethan," she whispered, eyes shining. "This is your world, not mine." He wanted to argue, but knew she was right. He left the cafe cameras trailing behind, and his reputation crumbling again. That night, he sat alone in his car, outside the children's hospital, the handkerchief clenched in his fist. He'd spent years building walls around guilt, and she had torn them down, only for him to rebuild them with regret. Meanwhile, Lena walked into the small art room at the hospital the next morning. Dozens of children were there painting under her guidance. The colors were messy and bright proof that chaos could still make beauty. When the door opened quietly behind her, she thought it was one of the nurses. But it was Ethan again. He looked pale, humbled, and tired. In his hands was a donation check made out to the hospital in her brother's name. "I don't want to buy forgiveness," he said before she could speak. "This isn't for you. It's for him. For the boy who believed kindness outlives us." Tears welled in her eyes. "You remembered. How could I forget?" he said. "It's the only true thing I've learned in years." He placed the handkerchief on the table beside the paint jars. "Sophie sewed it back herself. She said it's not ours until you keep it again." Lena touched the soft fabric, her throat tightening. "How is she stronger?" he said. "She walks with braces now. She keeps asking when Miss Sunshine's coming home." Lena closed her eyes, fighting emotion. "She's better off without me." "No," he said quietly. "She's better because of you." They stood in silence, the smell of paint filling the air. Then the hospital director entered with a tablet showing a live news feed. Ethan frowned. The headline read, "Coal Corporation under fire for charity misuse. CEO admits fault." The video showed Ethan from earlier that morning, standing at a press conference alone. "I was blind," his recorded voice said. "I let power matter more than people." The woman accused of exploitation was the only honest person in the room. The director turned to him. "You didn't tell us you were going to confess publicly." "Didn't need to," he said simply. Lena stared at him, stunned. "You gave them everything." "I had to," he said. "You taught me that truth matters more than survival." He turned to leave, but Lena grabbed his sleeve. "What happens now? I lose everything," he said, almost smiling. "And maybe that's how I finally start over." That night, Ethan drove back to his hotel room, expecting silence. Instead, a soft knock echoed on the door. He opened it to find Lena standing there holding the handkerchief. "I can't promise anything," she said, her voice trembling. "But maybe you shouldn't have to fall alone." Ethan stepped aside, his heart pounding. "I was never looking for perfect," he whispered. "Just honest." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe we're both learning." They sat by the window as the Texas rain began to fall, neither speaking, both understanding that love wasn't about saving or owning. It was about standing when everything else had fallen apart. The next morning, Ethan drove her to the cafe before dawn. The reporters were gone. The sun broke through the clouds, lighting up the desert horizon. As she got out, she turned to him. "So what now, Mr. Cole?" "Now I stand," he said, "and I hope one day you'll stand beside me." She nodded, touching the embroidered name on the handkerchief. "Then make it worth standing for." When she walked inside, Ethan sat in the car for a long time, watching the first light hit the sky, realizing that for the first time in years, the sunrise didn't hurt. The New York skyline glittered under the camera lights as reporters filled the grand hall of the Cole Foundation. It had been 48 hours since Ethan's confession video leaked, and the media was hungry for blood or redemption, whichever sold more headlines. At the center of the stage, Ethan stood behind a simple wooden podium. No teleprompter, no script, just a man ready to burn down the image he'd spent his life building. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice low but steady. "For years I've let people believe power meant perfection. That control was the same as care. I was wrong." The room went silent. Every flashbulb froze midair. When the footage of my daughter and a diner waitress went viral, I reacted the way the world expected me to, with anger, denial, and ego. I saw kindness as weakness. I treated a stranger's compassion as humiliation. He paused, scanning the crowd, until the room itself seemed to hold its breath. "But that woman, Lena Hart, didn't exploit my daughter. She reminded me how to be a father. She showed my child that love can exist outside luxury and pity. The murmurs started immediately, cameras clicking faster. Victoria's former allies from the PR firm sat stiffly in the back, their faces pale. Ethan continued, his voice breaking only once. This company built its empire on innovation. But what good is invention if we forget humanity? While we hosted galas, our charity funds were being stolen by someone I trusted. He lifted a folder and placed it on the podium. Here are the financial records, every transfer, every lie. Today I'm handing them to the district attorney. A wave of shock rippled through the press. A few gasps, one shouted question. Are you admitting guilt? Ethan nodded slowly. Yes, because silence is guilt too. Outside, massive screens replayed live footage of his statement. Hashtags that once mocked him now turned. Kindness over power began trending within minutes. Social media flooded with old clips of Lena, helping Sophie this time, reframed with new captions. Real compassion needs no cameras. As Ethan finished speaking, he caught a movement near the back of the hall. A woman in a simple blue dress stood near the doors, almost blending with the crowd. Lena. He blinked, certain his mind was playing tricks, but then she stepped forward slightly, eyes glistening. For a brief moment, the noise of the room faded. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that asked for nothing but understanding. Cameras swung toward her, flashes exploding like lightning. Reporters whispered, "Is that her?" The waitress, Ethan, lifted his hand. No questions for her. She's not the story. I am. Security instinctively moved to escort Lena out, but Ethan stopped them. She belongs here more than anyone else. He stepped down from the stage, walking toward her. The room parted like water around them. You didn't have to come, he said quietly when he reached her. I wanted to see if you meant it, Lena replied. Every word he said. Then why tell the world? Because I owed you truth, where I once gave you shame. Her eyes softened but didn't break. And what about Sophie? She's here, he said, nodding toward the side entrance. The little girl rolled in, with her braces, smiling shyly at the sight of Lena. Miss Sunshine, Sophie whispered. The press cameras melted into a blur as Lena knelt, hugging Sophie tightly. The child giggled, then pulled something from her small purse, the same handkerchief washed and restitched. Daddy fixed it, she said proudly. Said it's supposed to go back to where it belongs. Lena looked up, eyes meeting Ethan's. Maybe it belongs with both of us, she said softly. The applause began hesitantly, then swelled through the room. Not for power or confession, but for something the world rarely celebrated anymore: humility. Ethan took Lena's hand and guided her back toward the podium. This foundation, he said into the microphone, isn't about rebuilding my name. It's about rebuilding what greed took from others. Starting today, the Sophie Initiative will fund free therapy and care for children with disabilities. No red tape, no press, just help. The audience stood. Reporters who had come for scandal found themselves clapping through tears. Outside, the giant screen froze on the image of Ethan and Lena standing beside Sophie, a family not of perfection, but of truth. As the crowd dispersed, Lena turned to him. You just declared war on your own board. He smiled faintly. Then it's about time I fought for the right thing. And what happens when they come after you? She asked. Then I'll remember this, he said, gesturing to Sophie and the handkerchief, proof that miracles start small. Later that night, the footage from the event went viral again, but this time the tone was different. People called it the speech that saved a soul. Teachers shared it with students. Parents commented about second chances. and tucked quietly in the corner of the trending page. One photo, Lena hugging Sophie Ethan, watching from behind, became the image of redemption. For the first time in years, the billionaire who had built an empire from silence finally found peace in the noise. The flight to Texas felt different this time. There was no entourage, no assistant, no camera crew. Just Ethan, his daughter, and a silence that wasn't empty anymore. It was the sound of something mending. Sophie sat by the window, her braces tucked beneath a soft blanket, tracing the clouds with her finger. "Do you think Miss Sunshine will like my painting?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "If it's anything like you, she'll love it." When they landed, the afternoon sun painted the fields gold. The small town looked unchanged, the diner, the hospital, the cafe where he had found her last. But something in Ethan had shifted. He wasn't arriving as a CEO seeking forgiveness. He was just a man trying to make a promise mean something. They parked in front of the cafe. Through the glass window, he saw Lena wiping tables, hair tied up, face calm. The bell chimed softly when they entered, and she turned, startled. For a moment, she didn't move. Sophie broke the silence first, holding up her painting. A watercolor of 3 stick figures under a bright yellow sun. "It's us," she said proudly. Lena knelt, her eyes filling with tears. "You walked here with your braces. I wanted to show you." "I can," Sophie said, beaming. "Daddy said you helped me believe." Lena's voice trembled. "You did that yourself, sweetheart." Ethan stood a few feet away, uncertain. When Lena finally looked at him, her expression was guarded but not cold. "You really came back," she said quietly. "I told you I would," he replied. "Not to fix anything, just to be present. And the world you left behind, let it keep spinning," he said softly. "I've got something steadier now." He glanced at Sophie, who was busy admiring the pastry display. The air between them was fragile but alive. Lena gestured toward a corner booth. "Sit," she said. "I'll bring coffee. We can pretend the world's quiet again." Ethan sat watching her move. Every detail, the way she poured sugar, the faint hum she made under her breath, felt like home disguised as ordinary life. When she slid the cup toward him, her hand brushed his, and something like electricity passed through the air. Not the kind that burns, but the kind that wakes you up. "You didn't have to come all this way," she said. "I did," he answered. "I needed you to see that the man in those headlines isn't the one sitting here." She studied him, searching for the walls he used to hide behind. There were none left. "Sophie told me about the foundation," Lena said. "The hospital already called. They said you named one of the new therapy rooms after my brother. He deserved that," Ethan said. "He changed you, and you changed me." Her eyes softened. "I'm still angry, you know." "You should be," he said. "I earned that. But I'm also proud," she added, voice breaking. "Not of the billionaire you were, but the father you are now." For the first time, Ethan looked like a man who didn't need to prove anything. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the handkerchief, now embroidered with 3 initials, SL and E. "Sophie added the letters," he said it belongs to all of us now. Lena traced the stitching with her thumb, her tears falling silently. "She's wiser than we are. She's ours," Ethan said. The words came out before he could stop them. They hung in the air like a prayer, trembling but true. Lena didn't answer right away. She took a deep breath and looked at him, eyes steady. "What happens next, Ethan?" "Whatever you'll let happen," he said. "No promises, no pressure, just days like this. Small ones, real ones." Lena smiled faintly. "You've learned the secret, haven't you?" What's that love doesn't have to be loud to last. They sat there for a long while, the kind of silence that feels like peace instead of distance. Outside, the wind moved softly through the trees, carrying the scent of rain. Later that evening, Ethan helped close the cafe, stacking chairs and wiping tables beside her. The simplicity of it made him feel lighter than any boardroom ever had. When they stepped outside, the streetlights flickered to life, and Sophie laughed as a gentle drizzle began to fall. "Rain again," Lena said, lifting her face to the sky. "You think it's a sign?" "Maybe," Ethan said, taking off his jacket and placing it over her shoulders. "Or maybe it's just a reminder that the good things in life don't come without getting a little wet." She laughed quietly, the sound mixing with the patter of rain. Sophie ran ahead, her braces clinking softly on the pavement, her joy unrestrained. Ethan and Lena followed slower, walking side by side. "I used to think redemption meant rewriting the past," Ethan said. "Now I think it's just doing better with what's left. That's all any of us can do," she said. They reached the end of the street where the cafe sign glowed faintly in the drizzle. Sophie stopped looking up at a paper lantern hanging from the awning. "Can we make a wish?" she asked. "Of course," Lena said, lighting the small candle inside. "You first." Sophie closed her eyes. "I wish this time Daddy doesn't forget how to laugh." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "That's a good one," he whispered. "Your turn," Sophie said to Lena. "I wish kindness never gets filmed again," she said softly. "Only felt." "And you, Daddy?" Sophie asked. Ethan thought for a moment. "I wish this us never ends." The lantern drifted upward, a small glow disappearing into the dark sky, carrying their wishes somewhere unseen. When it was gone, Lena turned to him. "You can stay for dinner," she said quietly. "But after that, we'll see." "That's all I need," he said. Back inside, they shared soup and laughter under the hum of old fluorescent lights. It wasn't glamour, but it was real. Later, when Sophie fell asleep on the couch, Lena sat beside Ethan, her head resting on his shoulder. "You know," she murmured, half asleep, "you never did tell me what you saw in that diner the first day." He smiled faintly. "I saw someone remind my daughter what joy looks like," he said, "and remind me what grace feels like." She lifted her head slightly, eyes glimmering. "And now I see home," he said simply. The rain softened against the windows. Outside, the lantern's glow was long gone, but its reflection still shimmered faintly in the puddles, proof that light once shared never truly fades. 3 years later, the Maine coastline stretched beneath a sky of soft gold and pale blue. The air was crisp with salt and sunlight, and children's laughter echoed from the courtyard of a newly built therapy center. A sign above the entrance read, "The Sophie Foundation, Hope Moves." Inside, sunlight spilled through tall windows as children practiced walking between rails. Nurses guided them gently, and parents watched with eyes that had finally learned to believe again. Ethan stood near the entrance, his suit jacket gone sleeves rolled up, helping a boy fix his crutch. The billionaire image had faded from him completely. What remained was something quieter, truer. "There," he said, smiling as the boy steadied himself. "Now you're taller than me." Across the hall, Lena directed a group of volunteers painting murals, colorful oceans, mountains, and skies full of lanterns. Her hair was tied loosely, her hands stained with blue paint, and her face glowed with the kind of peace that no spotlight could ever steal. She turned when she heard Sophie's laugh. The girl, now 9, walked carefully between the parallel bars braces gleaming in the light. "Look, Mom," Sophie said proudly. I can go 6 steps now without holding. Lena clapped eyes bright. You're flying, sweetheart. Sophie grinned. Daddy said we're celebrating with pancakes. That was your idea, actually, Ethan said, walking over, amusement softening his face. I just follow orders. Lena smiled at him, that same unguarded warmth that once began in a diner miles away. You're getting good at it, she teased, learning from the best. He said, glancing at her with affection that no longer needed to hide. At the opening ceremony, guests gathered families, therapists, journalists, donors, but the atmosphere was intimate. No flashing lights, no spectacle, just people whose lives had been touched by what these three had built together. Ethan stepped to the podium, Sophie by his side, Lena standing quietly behind them. When I first saw a woman kneeling beside my daughter in a diner, I thought I was witnessing pity. He began, his voice calm and sure. But it wasn't pity. It was love in its simplest form, uncomplicated, undeserved, unstoppable. That moment changed my life. It showed me that love doesn't arrive with fanfare. It shows up quietly in acts that no one's filming. He turned to Lena, eyes soft. Somewhere between that moment and this one, I stopped building companies and started building a life. The audience applauded, but Ethan's attention stayed on Lena and Sophie. When the speeches ended, Sophie tugged at her father's hand. Can I show her now? Ethan nodded, smiling. Sophie handed Lena a small wrapped box. Inside lay the same embroidered handkerchief, washed, pressed, and framed behind glass. The initials SLE were stitched in gold, surrounded by tiny painted stars. Beneath it, in Sophie's handwriting, were 4 words, "Love that stays forever." Lena covered her mouth, tears spilling silently. "It's for your office," Sophie said proudly, "so you don't forget us when you're helping other kids." Lena knelt, pulling her into an embrace. "Oh, honey, I couldn't forget if I tried." Ethan placed a gentle hand on both of them, his voice low. "You see, Sophie, that's what love does, it stays." The crowd around them clapped softly, moved not by wealth or fame, but by the rare sight of healing that had come full circle. Later that evening, after the guests left and the sun sank behind the pines, Ethan and Lena stood outside the center's glass doors. The ocean shimmered beyond the hill, catching the last blush of daylight. Sophie ran ahead to release a paper lantern into the breeze, a ritual she and Lena had kept since the Texas cafe. "Make a wish," Sophie called. "I already have mine," Lena said, watching her. "She's right there." Ethan slipped his hand into hers. "You used to say love doesn't have to be loud to last." She looked up at him, smiling softly. "And now you believe me. Now I live by it," he said. They watched the lantern drift upward until it vanished into the darkening sky, its light becoming one with the stars. "What did she wish for?" Ethan asked. "She told me earlier," Lena replied. "She wished for every kid here to have someone believe in them the way we believe in her." He nodded slowly. "Then she's already changing the world." The wind picked up, carrying the sound of distant laughter. Lena leaned against him, and for a while neither spoke. The world had forgiven them, but more importantly, they had forgiven themselves. "Do you ever think about that day at the diner?" she asked quietly. "Every day," he said. "It was the day I stopped existing and started living." She smiled. "And this," he said, looking at her and then at their daughter under the lantern glow, "is everything that came after." Inside the center, the lights flickered softly against the murals, the painted skies, full of color and movement. The handkerchief hung in the entrance hall, framed between photos of children walking for the first time. Beneath it, a small brass plate bore the foundation's motto, Kindness over power. As the night settled, Ethan, Lena, and Sophie walked hand in hand toward their home by the sea, their silhouettes framed by the golden spill of light from the center behind them. No paparazzi, no scandal, no headlines. Just the quiet certainty that love once found doesn't need to be loud to last. It just needs to stay. And that Soul Stories, fam, is how love can rebuild even the most broken lives. If this story touched you the way it touched me while writing it, take a second before you scroll away. Think about that one person in your life who saw you when the world didn't, someone who believed in you before you believed in yourself. Maybe it was a teacher, a parent, a friend, or even a stranger who showed up in a moment when you needed kindness the most. Send them this story tonight, or just text them 2 words, "Thank you." Because sometimes gratitude is the truest love story of all. Ethan and Lena's journey wasn't about fairy tale perfection or billionaire mansions. It was about learning that healing happens in small, quiet ways. A handkerchief passed between hearts, a child learning to stand, a father daring to feel again. That's the kind of love that changes people. And if you've ever felt like life has left you behind, remember Sophie, the little girl who once couldn't walk, but who taught 2 grown-ups how to move forward again. If you're still here with me, drop a heart emoji in the comments so I know you felt it too. Tell me where you're watching. From Houston, San Diego, Trinidad, London, or maybe a tiny town nobody's ever heard of. I love seeing our Soul Stories family grow all over the world. Your comments are the heartbeat of this channel. They remind me that no matter how dark a story starts, it can always find its light again. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on the little bell so you never miss our next story. Because next week we're going even deeper, another tale about second chances, quiet courage, and the kind of love that doesn't ask to be seen, only to be felt. If you believe kindness can still go viral for the right reasons, share this video with someone who needs hope today. Let's make Acha kindness over power more than a hashtag. Let's make it a promise. To every viewer who stayed until the end, this one's for you. May you find your own handkerchief moment, the thing that reminds you you're still human, still capable of love, and still worthy of being seen. And until our next story, keep believing, keep feeling, and keep choosing the kind of love that stays. This is Emma with all my heart saying thank you for being part of our story tonight. I'll see you in the next one.